Hi guys, welcome to this month's video tutorial. It's a cosplay illustration that I did in conjunction with Katyuska Moonfox, one of Australia's leading cosplayers, and I just wanted to go through my process of how I made this final painting. It was a lot of fun to make, and it was a lot easier because we had a lot of the reference already. However, it was still a lot of struggle in getting the lighting right because we relighted the image. And here I'm just doing the pencil sketch to start off and really work out the process and I suppose get everything right, because at the start of the painting it's always really important to draw. I mean I have a range of ways of painting, and sometimes I go straight to painting something, like, you know, if I'm really confident on the topic, or if it's something, if I really want to explore an idea and I've got time to explore, I'll just go straight to colour and paint. And it's not that I wasn't confident about this, but I really, when you're dealing with people and you're drawing people, you're painting a portrait of someone, it is really important to draw the person as you see them, and get the actual foundations of the drawing correct, and make sure you have drawing skills. So, you know, a lot of people don't see my drawing process, and I do draw a lot actually, but I'm going to be putting that up a lot more these days, simply because my drawing process, because it is really important. And I did that with September's drawing, which is coming out, which is Goblin, and I basically, that you can't draw from reference. You can look at other goblins and the way they're drawn, but you know, goblin faces kind of comes from imagination, and that was the same thing. I had to draw from imagination, and same with dragons. I mean, you can get a great deal of reference from lizards and stuff like that. Now, you can paint a really cool dragon like that. However, the issue is, apologies for that, I had to turn off Facebook. The issue is that, you know, when you're painting from imagination, it's really good to paint from imagination. In this case, the only really imaginary part is the actual environment in the whole work, and so really all I'm doing is drawing from life, you know, almost doing like a life drawing class. So this is why cosplay illustration is really, I wouldn't say it's easier, it's just less to worry about, and I was able to focus more on actually getting the rendering right and the lighting. The thing that I actually changed from the photo reference, as you can see, is I actually changed the lighting in the final thing. I actually made the lighting like a different color, like pinks and blues, and, you know, work from there. So here you can see me drawing, just basically drawing this as right as I can, or getting it right. This is sped up, and I'm sorry if that, look, if any of you are watching my videos, I'm open to feedback and suggestions. If you think this is too fast or it's too slow, send me an email or send me a message through Patreon, and we'll basically endeavor, say if there's 3 or 4 of you all saying, look, you know, it's got to be slower, or it has to be faster, we'll do our best to manage that. But anyway, I suppose first thing, I mean, I did thank you already, but thanks again. So thanks again for subscribing and being a patron. Your help goes a long way, because it allows me, the more funding we get on Patreon, it allows me to hire Christy, my videos person, and she's also an illustrator. It allows me to hire in the studio, but also allows us to take the business to the next level. It allows me to focus more on developing intellectual property, developing comic book stories, developing fan art, or not fan art as such, but public domain art or portraits like this, doing stuff that, you know, you all want. Obviously, the grey area of fan art, I don't touch that too much, because I don't want to be sued by big companies like Disney and that, because I have worked for Disney, as you all know. But you know, I will paint, you know, nearly any topic that you come up with, and that's why I've developed the Patreon, because I like fairy tales, I love fantasy like this, I love horror, I love sci-fi, and you know, if you'll vote, like basically if we hit the 500 gold tier, you know, we'll be able to make it so that we can vote. Sorry I'm talking about this, but I think it's important that you all know that I do appreciate you all, and without you all I can't kind of do this. I'll have to focus more on chasing client work, and that's not a problem. I do love working with clients. I still have client work while I'm working on the Patreon, but I definitely, doing Patreon allows me to be more choosy. You know, it allows me to say, hey, I only want to work with Wizards of the Coast, you know, people that make Magic the Gathering, or I only want to work on Dungeons and Dragons, or I only want to work with Disney, and instead of taking nearly every job I can to survive as an artist. and that's just part of the game. But again, thank you all, appreciate it. So what I'm doing here is, as you can see, I drew the whole figure in and got it, most of it right. It did take me a few rounds. As you saw before, there was actually an underdrawing. It was a very light drawing underneath because I sketched it out from the reference, and then I was like, no, I've got to clean it up. So sometimes you have to clean up things. Here I just started sketching out an environment, and in all honesty, looking at this environment, I like this one better than the final. Like, I wish I went in this direction, but it kind of, once you start going in a direction and you've got time limits, you have to kind of stick to it. I don't think that the final environment is totally bad. I think it actually works, but I think with perspective and making sure the character fits in perspective, sometimes, you know, it's better to make the background very simple. Like this background is simple for the character Katyuska, well, she's actually Fire Emblem. She's from Fire Emblem. She's Tharja, sorry. To fit her in perspective, it would have been better to have just the standard 1 point in the background with her being, say, 3-point camera angle, because it does look a little bit better. But the final environment is actually 3-point perspective. She is 3 points perspective. And you'll see the grid when it comes up, the grid that I put up finally to sort out the perspective, because the biggest challenge for me with this painting was I've got this great portrait, or this great photo reference of this cosplayer, which is Katyuska, and I've got to now, I suppose, work out an environment that fits that perspective. So that was the most challenging part, and I'll admit I struggled with it. So I had to imagine and come up with a whole bunch of stuff, and that was the hardest bit, was designing the environment. And it could have been done easier, but I suppose for me this was, didn't have control over the photography. When I painted Robin Hood, I did James Murray as Robin Hood in the first video ever of cosplay illustration. I actually was able, I shot the photos. I took the photos of James, and I was able to control everything in that. And this is why I recommend, as an artist, if you're going to ever do fan art like this or cosplay illustration, and you want to do a portrait of someone, a cosplayer, and you have to put them in an environment or a different scene, try and shoot the photo yourself based on an idea of the drawing that you have. That way you save yourself time and money. You know, here I'm just roughing in colour, so basically, you know, painting, you know, background, the actual character. And I went straight to colour. I didn't go to grayscale with this painting, simply because I was pretty confident what I wanted. I knew, like, hey, I want to do this kind of a look, you know. I actually like the sunset. I wish I put a sunset in this. Looking at this now, I wish I did this, but I think when I went down the other direction, I liked the perspective in the other painting. So, you know, sometimes when you've got time restraints, it's really hard to kind of go, hey, I'm going to throw out the background and start again. Sometimes, you know, if you've got more time, you can do that. And this is a part of the Patreon. You know, as we get more time and more subscribers come on board, we can explore things, and we can say, hey, let's try it with this environment. Let's, you know, let's make it even better, you know, or let's do another painting every month, if, you know, if that's what the fans, you all want. So here I'm just blocking in colour, filling in colour, and just painting in shadows. At the moment, she's kind of sitting on the edge of a castle wall, like a ledge, and a fortification of some sort. And that changes as well. So it changes dramatically. All part of the game. And here, all I'm basically doing is filling in the colours that are available there. Just going in and filling it in, and making sure that we have the colours from the photo references. I do sample from there. I use I'm not going to lie, I use the colour picker to get the photo colours. But the thing is, even though I got the photo colour, this sped me up straight away. Having a colour photo, I didn't have to work out the colour. But what I did later on is I used the actual colours and the values of the photos, and I colour picked it, but I ended up changing the colours anyway. So I ended up doing a colour balance later on, and I ended up painting new lighting as well. So, you know, it was a matter of, okay, say adding in a hard light layer, a soft light layer, and bringing in different effects into the scene as well. So here I am just filling the whole thing in now, making sure I color picked everything. And people say, oh, that's cheating and whatever. The reality is, when you are working in the industry, when you are working for several clients, use the digital tools. If you've got a color picker or you've got photo references and you want to put in photos, there's no, cheating is a silly word. If you've got timelines and you've got to get things done in a certain amount of time and days, anything that's going to speed up your process, you'll do it. And I'm not saying I can't do this by eye. I could definitely look at this and go, okay, I know what colors I'm going to get. But to move that slider around and change the color every time, it's a lot of work. That's the reality. The reality is, it's more work. It's more work than actually going and color picking thing. If you're using traditional media, you don't even have that option. You just got to mix your colors and do it all by eye, and that's all part of it. So the benefit of having photo reference is you can use the color palette of the photo straight away, and that speeds you up dramatically as well. So all up, this video is basically, I don't know, 2 hours, I think. But to give you an instance, like this took me a week to paint. So we included as much of, well, I wouldn't say a week, it was probably about 4 to 5 working days. So we have sped this up dramatically, like 6 times or whatever it is, more than that. So, but I think it really gives you a good idea of how I'm working. I'm just playing around with shadow. So as you can see, all I've really done is basically painted from the character, from the photo, and then I'm actually having to play around with the lighting and fix it up and make it look more and more like her. Capture all the subtleties in it as well. Just fun. Yeah, so the cool thing about future videos or future topics is that I have a really broad interest. Like myself, it's not that I'm not loyal to anything. I am not like an uber fan of anything. I'm not like a big fan of Harry Potter. I mean, the only thing is I do like fantasy a lot, but I also like horror equally as well. And I do like science fiction, but I'm not like one of those people like, oh, I totally just like to only paint Superman or Star Wars or Batman. I love it all. And so the great thing about that for my fans is that if I've got a whole range of topics where we can do dragon. I won't just do dragons. We'll have fairies as an option. We'll have mermaids. We have all these different topics. Sea serpents, any kind of fairy tales like Snow White. Here I'm. Anyway, I'll explain in a minute. I'll put the divine proportion grid in here, and this basically is for me to work out where to crop the picture and to make sure that the image is cropped correctly. So usually divine proportion, that's kind of where that's the area where her face is. That's the focal point. So I've scaled it up so that she has she's basically sitting in the divine proportion grid around the focal point. So that was a final trim and crop that I had to do. And just positioning. So like before I went to full render and started doing all the lighting and getting all the textures right, I basically had to position her to fit into the divine proportion grid and into the rule of thirds, kind of to put her in the most dramatic spot. These are the most important thing in design and composition when you're an illustrator, is to really focus on the 2 major things: rule of thirds and divine proportion. Make sure your painting is sitting within those. I'm not saying exactly, I'm not saying you can't break the rules and do other things. If something looks cool and it just looks cool, it looks cool. You haven't used the divine proportion grid, it just something about it looks amazing and people love it, then there's obviously some theory behind why that looks good. But making good imagery is about composition and laying out a composition really well. And the most, I actually would urge you, I mean, I can put up some information, I probably will, and on the actual rule of thirds and divine proportion eventually, because they're really important foundations that you need to understand with design. Now here we go. So actually what happened here is I changed the perspective. As you can see, this is where perspective changed. I basically put up a grid that was 3-point perspective, and what I'm going to do eventually is have videos on the foundations of perspective, my understanding of it, foundations of lighting, foundations of all these cool things that will help you. But I'm going to talk about it in every painting because I'm the kind of person that's practical, and I like to practically apply and show people how it applies to art. So here I was playing with like different color effects and, you know, to give her a different look and feel. But as you can see, the whole background has changed. It's basically following the grid, the lines of the wall, the castle wall, and it's going into 3-point perspective. I urge you to look that one up too. That's your homework. Go and check out what is 3-point perspective. Because when you look at the photo, when you take a photo with a wider camera lens, like the photo reference on the right, it does kind of create this 3-point perspective kind of feel. Or no, feeling. It is actually 3-point perspective. It's a distorted angle. So basically with perspective, you've got 3 types of perspective. There's 1-point perspective, 2-point, and 3-point perspective. So here I'm just playing around with the lighting. I'm just going, okay, what will it look like? I'm doing a quick lighting test before I do a final render. What I do is I actually go and create color dodge layers. As you can see, there's a color dodge layer there. I also create soft light layers or hard light layers, whatever works really. And I go, hey, what would it look like if the bounce light is blue and the direct source light from the magic is pink? Or what would it look like if it was purple? Or what would it look like if it's yellow? Because really it changes depending on the values of your painting and the color you're using in your painting. So sometimes a color dodge in yellow may not work if you've got green in the background, or it may not work if you've got blue in the background. And so this is really important foundation in digital painting, is get your colors right for your color dodge. You know, your color dodge or your hard light layers, when you're doing lighting will only work based on the hue that you've got. You know, so usually you need dark values behind if you're going to start doing color dodge layers, and you really need to go for the opposite color for it to pop out. You need a contrasting color for it to kind of go, you know, zap out of the page. I mean, and also contrasting colors draws in attention to areas. So here I'm just rendering more of the painting. Render, lots of fun. So just putting in shadows, and as you can see, I duplicate the character. Like I duplicate the layer of where the character's in, just so I've got a backup. So if I screw something up, or if I really ruin something, I can then go back to the original. So, and I switch it on and off there, so you can see. So yeah, I'm just using textured brushes now, and just putting in some texture into the bricks, into the wall. And it's not, this was just a rough, you know, I was just like, hey, what would it look like with a bit of texture? And I ended up actually putting photo texture instead and painted on top of the photos. So this totally changes again. But the reason why I'm showing you all this is because there is an evolution in the way I paint, and maybe that's what takes me longer, but it's not that I'm indecisive, but I like to explore work, and I like to make sure that if I've got time on something, like I had a moderate amount of time on this, I was like, okay, let's explore it. You know, let's go and explore the idea. So, and that's what you need to do when you're designing stuff. Here's the perspective grid. See, as you can see, the lines, they're like, I start painting the environment to fit that perspective, and so you've got 3 points. You've got basically your vanishing points are off stage. That's how it works. So your points, you have radial lines, and there's one on each side, and then there's one below the canvas, and then those three radial grids create this 3-point perspective, right? And this grid actually works well with the whole scene, the whole environment, and the character. So it's really good to kind of get these kind of grids up at the start, so that way when you paint your rough sketch like this, I'm doing a rough sketch of the environment, it all makes sense. And this was just roughly painted in and stuff, so I'm using different textured brushes. Here I'm just like hoping for happy accidents. I'm just randomly putting in mountains and like, does it work like this in nature? And I'm putting in a wall. But I think I was in general happy. Like at the end of the day, this felt like a deeper image. This felt like it had a deep perspective, for me anyway. And it's really important that you explore the perspective of an image. So I hope that explains everything. So it's just like basically here I really want to make selections as well. So I start making selections of the castle. And it's really important to use selections when you're doing hard surface objects like a castle or anything that's hard. So, especially with environments, you want to have hard, crisp edges in certain areas of the painting. And I use the polygon lasso tool or whatever, really any lasso, to make selections and paint in there. It creates a really crisp edge. So it's something that you really should do. Get in the habit of using the selection tool a lot when you're digitally painting, simply because it will save you so much time. It's really, and the other thing is as well, if you can use a hard brush, start off your paintings with hard brushes versus a soft brush, because it's always really easy to start hard. Sorry, it's really easy. Yeah, it's way easier to go hard and then go softer on a painting, on an area. Whereas if you start a whole painting and you use a soft brush, like an airbrush effect on the whole character, and then you're like, hey, you want to make this look like it's more crisp in areas or look like it's got a hard edge, it's more work to do that. It's actually harder. You have to repaint stuff. Apologise for sounds in the background. It is close to dinner time here, so the video's been recorded while dinner's being made, so hopefully it doesn't ruin the recording, and shouldn't be a problem, but apologies for that. We've got to eat sometimes. And so as you can see, it really speeds you up having selections. And this is pretty much the architecture I went for the whole time. I really wanted it to have this grand castle kind of feel, like she's in this big castle and she's in this really huge scene, and it's really important. It was really important for me, so I just kind of went with that, which is cool. Again, making selections, polygon lasso tools. That's in the top. It's in the top left under the selection marquee, in case you didn't know. So, here I'm just painting the mountain, making sure the actual ledge as well fit in perspective as well. I was just playing around with it, make sure that everything worked. So, like I had to clean up. So I was basically checking the perspective grid. There you can see it's quite strong there, what the perspective was that I was going for. And I actually had to check that each wall was working in perspective. So she's kind of sitting on the ledge, and we're kind of looking down at her, and her shoes are coming up. Well, they're not coming up at us, but they're facing us. So we're kind of looking down on her in this painting, and to give it like this whole grand kind of appeal, you know. And so I've actually separated everything into a layering environment. So I separated that castle out, and then I created another castle, I suppose like a castle edge on the left, and separate that out into the painting as well. So it's really, really important to do that. Very important. And there you go, there's a selection tool again. And I've got the grid up, and I'm using the selection tool to paint in the areas, you know, paint in the shadows, paint in the platform, and the doors, you know, the edges, the architectural structures, and to really make it crisp. That's probably the best way you're going to paint architecture, is using the selection tool. I mean, even if you were painting this traditionally, or you're drawing this traditionally as an illustrator, like I've done architectural illustration before for people, and traditional one, and to draw a house you need to use a ruler. Like, it's as simple as that. You know, if you're going to draw architecture, you will be using a ruler or some sort of straight edge. And I'm pretty sure even like Leonardo da Vinci and people like that would have used some tool, or like a ruler of some sort, to draw, you know, architecture and engineering plans accurately. You know, so whether it's a ruler or whether you're using a selection marquee, it's not cheating. It's still not cheating. You know, so I painted over that by accident. There you go, there's a cooking in the background. Food is good. Without food, I think we'd all be dead. So just painting in the whole architecture there. I ended up painting in that whole wall because it looks weird without it being like that. Just lots of fun. So I'm just still working out the environment. Again, flip the canvas. I haven't done that. I didn't do that at the start of the design, and I should have. My bad, I'm not perfect. But flipping that canvas allows you to see what's wrong with your design, and I, again, switch it to grayscale mode. Make sure you switch to grayscale mode. Really important. Very important. Good old grayscale mode. So I'm still working out the environment here, you know. To be honest with you, I probably did waste time here. I should have just drawn before I painted everything, you know, the whole environment. But I think I just wanted to enjoy exploring this, and sometimes painting, for me, feels more natural for exploring rather than drawing. So painting shapes and stuff. Here I'm actually getting the values right, because the thing is with values is you want it so that the background and the main character pops out. So here I'm making sure that the values aren't too dark in the background, and that you can see everything perfectly. And I just wanted these kind of big mountains, you know, to show that, you know, this castle is in like a really cool, you know, mountainous environment, you know, put it simply. So, because mountains are so cool. Mountains are the best. Yeah, so I'm just playing around with the shapes. You know, the thing is as well, when you're painting like mountains like this, you want to vary up the shape, language. You want to vary up. Like nature doesn't have much symmetry to it. You know, it really isn't like symmetrical at all. You kind of have to have random shapes in nature, and that is really hard to do. You know, people think that's easy, but it's actually really hard to paint nature because it's so random in a way. Like the actual shapes and stuff are so random. You know, when you're painting mountains, you know, a lot of our brains are tuned to paint mountains or paint natural things with symmetry. We kind of put things into grids for some reason, or we put things into. See, right now those mountains are 3 mountains in the background. These 3 main forms are all symmetrical. They all have a similar width, and I think we change it at the end. I'm pretty sure we do. Just double checking. Yeah, it really does change. Like the symmetry is broken up, and we make them look a lot bigger. And so that symmetry does change, and it doesn't have a kind of, you know, that pattern happening. And here we're just playing again. I'm experimenting with the color balance so that when I go to final paint or final rendering, I've got the right color balance up. Very important to do. Again, still painting that castle. And look, I'm not going to talk as much. I'll talk when something important comes up, because I don't know if you're getting sick of my voice, or I really need to know if my tips are helping you. So it'd be good if you can give me some Patreon comments. Like, even if you're getting these DVDs, send us a comment and let me know. Are my tutorials helping you? You know, am I giving you enough information? This is the detailing part. So we've got the environment. Now that the perspective of the environment is right, now that the perspective of the character is reasonably correct for me, like at a good point, I basically decide to go in and render the crap out of the person. So paint everything in the shadows, the lighting. And this is just, there's no like easy way to say how to do this, but other than looking and studying things. Actually, this is like doing a study for me. You know, for me, people say to you, oh, you do your foundations and studies. Well, I have to do foundations and studies as part of my client work. Like, even if someone comes to me and say, hey, I want to paint a reindeer, I want you to do a series of paintings on reindeers. I mean, I will collect references and I'll paint a reindeer to practice the reindeer, what it looks like. If they take a photo and they want that exact reindeer in a painting, the same face, the same structure, I will paint from that reference into the painting, into the final illustration. So for me, I do studies and I do a lot of drawings. I draw and paint from life, and you can never end. Doing foundations and studies, it never ends. Even as a professional, I'm still doing studies, so I recommend you to do studies. However, in this case with the cosplay illustration, I'm doing a study of a photo. So it's already there. What I want, like, I've already got photo reference. I'm actually painting from reference, getting the colors, getting the lighting, getting the mood right, cleaning up the design, making sure I look at this and I'm like, am I doing this right? You know, is this design right or is it wrong? And here you have to get it right, because the subtlety in this, the thing with painting women versus, say, like especially younger women or people that have got a very feminine face, or very, and I'm not trying to sound sexist or rude here, but even babies, like people that have very subtle features are a lot harder to paint. So women that, or even men that have a very feminine face, and babies that have very petite faces are really hard to capture that. You know, I personally find that harder. Whereas if you've got a person that has a real character face, you know, it's got wrinkles, or they've got an exaggerated nose, or they have an exaggerated eyes, or they have interesting a face, something that's really unique, like bigger features, like a bigger chin or something like that, it's easier to capture them or draw them because it's exaggerated. This is what I find. But when the thing with painting people, when you've got people that have I suppose very symmetrical faces, or very almost like, you know, model images, like what Hollywood views as being glamorous or whatever, you have someone that's, you know, perceived by say, you know, by Western society as being really perfect, a perfect face, so to speak. And I don't believe it to be perfect. I'm just saying, like, when you're painting someone that has model looks, it's a lot harder to paint those subtleties. And simply because you can just be off by 1 pixel and you have lost their essence or whatever. This is just, for me, what I find the hardest. I'm not saying it's right. Some people may find supermodels really easy to paint, or you know, Hollywood actors really easy to paint. I find that they are harder to paint, but it depends on the actor. Like someone like Harrison Ford, say, from Star Wars, especially now that he's aged, and even like Will Ferrell, someone like that. You know, it's a lot easier for me. I find that a lot easier to paint, not because I'm a guy or because they're a guy. Even like women like Bette Midler, you know, someone like that, so much easier to paint because they have a character face. They're not, you know, they're not perfect. You know, their faces. Some Hollywood actors have character to them, and they're iconic. And whereas, say, someone like Katyuska, who's beautiful and she has her own look, she has a supermodel look to her, and you know, and so her face features are very petite. So you have to be very. It's more delicate. The work is more delicate. That's the word. So, and it's the same. Like I said, it's got nothing to do with women. You know, there are men like that have very delicate features, facial features. But it's harder when you're painting babies as well. If you're painting really young children, I find they're very hard to capture because, you know, they have very small features. They have smaller, you know, they don't, you know, they've got a lot more to cover. Like it's hard to explain. So all I could say is go out and do that. Paint and draw all types of people, not just people that look like models or cosplayers. You know, I'm painting a cosplayer because I really like cosplay, and I also like game art. And this was one way for me to paint a game art without being sued by big companies, because I'm doing a cosplay portrait of a cosplayer dressed as a game character, and that's kind of like a loophole legally. But the point is, I have drawn and painted all types of people, from really old men and women to children, my nieces and nephews. I've drawn pictures of them, right up to my parents and my friends. So when painting from life or painting people from a photo, practice different types of people to see the difference. You know, this was quite challenging. You know, this painting was challenging because, like I said, she has like a very symmetrical face. She has very subtle features. They're beautiful features, but she has very subtle details in her face. So I have to capture that. If I got one shadow wrong on Katyuska, then it would make her look totally different. You know, if I moved the lip the wrong way or the nose the wrong way, it would be totally different. I did add a smirk to her face to make her look cheeky and have a smirk. So she's actually got more of a smirk in the painting than the actual photo. But the way I did that, I had to make sure that I didn't lose her essence. So here I'm just painting and painting and painting, putting in the shadows, getting that face right. That's the most important thing, get that face right. Very important. Get that face right. And it was the same with the angel. Like, even Christy, who modeled for the angel, she's got very kind of subtle features to her face, and you know, she also has a very like symmetrical face, and I suppose what you would say, something that's a lot harder to capture. So if you get the stroke wrong for the nose, you know, it's not like you move it over by 1 mil, okay, it still look like Christy. You move it over by 1 mil, it becomes someone else. And I mean, that does apply to other people, like say Harrison Ford, but I think, you know, Harrison Ford has such a character face. He has, you know, even if you got the nose, move the nose 2 mils to the right, people will still know it's Harrison Ford. And that's my point. You know, and that's why people can do caricatures as well, come out better on people that have a character face. That's what I find, and it does actually work. Like if someone has big ears, or they have big eyes, or they have a big nose, or a, you know, specific type of lips, their lips are shaped a certain way, you can exaggerate those things. Whereas Katyuska has a pretty nose, but it's not a huge nose. It's not a small nose. She has nice lips. They're not massively huge lips, like say Angelina Jolie's lips are massive. We know you know it's Angelina Jolie because she's got big lips. And people have drawn a character portrait of her like that, you know, with huge lips. And so, and I'm not saying, you know, Katyuska doesn't have character. She has character, but her character is that she has very subtle features. That's the word. So I don't want to say the wrong thing here or upset anyone. So I apologize if I have upset anyone. You know, I'm talking from a art perspective here, from a purely objective thing. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You know, as well. A lot of people have different views of what is beauty as well. You know, I think beauty comes in many shapes and sizes. To be honest, and I think, you know, when you're painting a picture, you know, it's good to have different characters to paint and different types of people to paint. Anyway, I'll stop talking about the body image thing, or I'll stop talking about, you know, beauty, what is beauty, because that's quite an academic kind of debate, and it is subjective. You know, beauty is subjective. There's no rules as to what is beautiful and what's not. So here I actually did paint in the ground, but then I deleted that ground and I put it back as a wall. I didn't like that ground. It made it look too flat, the piece. Apologies for all the sound effects. Here it's just a matter of detailing everything, detailing the shoes, detailing the stockings, the whole lot, the garment she's wearing, the costume. It's so important, you know, to get all that right, you know, and it's a lot of work. People think, you know, oh, it's easy painting stuff, you know, but for me, if you want to do a finished illustration, you really need to make sure that you, I suppose, detail everything. You know, there's no easy way. You know, the only other easy way would be to not paint that much detail in a painting. Go for a different style where it's less detailed, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I like to paint stuff with detail. As you can see here, I actually had to paint in this part on the shoe because it wasn't actually in the cosplay, so Katyuska got the cosplay wrong. She missed out these little things, and I actually looked at the character Tharja and I'm like, oh no, she has to have these things on her feet, you know. I don't think it's in the photo. Was not in the photo. Not at all. So it's just a matter of painting, get that texture right for the. Here I'm doing it in materials, so making sure that the stockings look like stockings. Materials, making sure the metal around her legs and stuff, the costume looks like the metal or whatever it is. Making sure the velvet looks like velvet. That metallic, the metallic, I suppose, garments look like metal. The headpiece she's wearing. And those metal rings that are around her thighs, it has to look like, golden, like gold or like metal. So, this is where you need to also understand materials. Make sure you get your materials right. So important. So I see a lot of people, they get their materials wrong all the time. They don't actually do it properly. They actually don't put in all the stuff correctly. So now it's just a matter of, I suppose, going in and fixing up everything, making sure, everything's right, really. It really is, there's no easy way here. I mean, you can use textured brushes and they help a little bit, but you really need to make sure your form and language is right. You've got everything right. And the one saving grace is that when you're painting using photo references, you have everything to go by. When you're painting from imagination alone, it's really hard because you have to go search for different references for different things. Like, say if you're going to do a dragon, you're going to look at different types of lizards, bat wings, all that sort of stuff. Whereas in this case, okay, at least we've got the cosplayer's already in costume, everything's done, so it makes life a lot easier. But it is a detailing process, so then you need to go in and go, okay, I'm going to add more detail, more lighting. You can see I've actually made the velvet lighter than it actually looks like, because I wanted to have more light to the scene, make it brighter. It's really important, to do that. If you think it needs more light here or there or whatever, it's really important that you do that. It's not easy to get it right. And here I'm getting the hand right, so it's a matter of just detailing everything, making sure that everything's right. Making sure it's all right. Because otherwise you can get into all sorts of problems. And I'm just painting with a soft brush at this point. Like, I've got in the hard brush I use to block in everything, but then I use a soft brush to really paint in the subtleties in the skin tones, because skin is really hard to paint. You're going to make it look luminescent. You have to make it look like it's, because skin doesn't also reflect light, it absorbs light, and it is translucent. It's kind of like cloth, cloth, you put light through it, light will shine out the other end. And our skin is hard, but you put light source right near our skin, sometimes light does go through and you see our body does absorb it, because we're made of water, and we're encased in skin and bone, encased in skin, we have bones underneath, but a majority of everything is water. We are made of water. So when you're painting skin, the light will hit it. It will bounce off it. It will reflect off it. Lighting will. You will see direct light hit the edge of something. Then you'll have bounce light bouncing up off other surfaces onto the skin, and then you'll have light that glows through the actual skin surface. So light looks like The best way to put it is go and put your hand against a torch, and you'll see the light almost doesn't shine through the other side of the hand, but you can see it. It makes it look like your hand's lit up. And so in order to get that effect, sometimes I use overlay or a soft light brush, and I'll paint another color. You know, I'll use the warmest color and I'll paint into that, you know, with a warm color. So that's really important to do as well. Very important. Here again, it's just getting that texture. So I actually had to paint, looking at that metallic kind of surface for her costume, that metallic paper or whatever it is. It's meant to be armor, but she's, you know, the only way to study materials is to look at materials and apply it to your painting. And in this case, we have the materials already there. We've got that metallic structure, that metallic material, and so it's really important to get that right. And it's just, it adds selective focus. So like by having these contrasting colors, this metallic surface versus these blue colors, it really does draw your eye into the character, because you're like, wow, you know, you can see all the detail popping out. So use that to your advantage also when you're designing your paintings, if you're using your imagination to make something. But like I said, it's just detailing everything. As you can see, look how many details I'm putting in that. You need a lot of detail to really capture the metal surface of that shoulder plate, or whatever it is, the shoulder, the garment that she's wearing that's got the metallic to it. And so like a lot of people say to me, oh, do you do foundations? Have you done any foundations and materials and stuff like that? I have done a lot of that when I was first started out. But it's never ending. Like the honest truth is, like you could go, okay, I'm going to go study how does metal look. Okay, yeah, you can cover like all the major. I've done material studies on metal, say water, clay, whatever it is. You know, cloth. You know, I've studied materials on specific surfaces and textures. But the reality is there are the world is full of infinite textures. You know that. I mean, just go outside and you see, like, I reckon, just as an exercise, go outside and look at the ground and just walk around your backyard or walk out into the street, and you see the ground changes from, say, concrete to paving to dirt to whatever else comes on, to maybe paper on the ground. So textures, there's an infinite amount of textures, and I'm not saying don't study textures, definitely studying, but you could be lost there forever just studying different textures. And this is why, like here, like, you know, even if let's say you painted this as a fantasy illustration and you painted it from your imagination, I would go and get references of metal armor and look at that, and what, you know, you design a drawing of your soldier or whatever it is that you want to make, you know, your fantasy warrior in metal armor, but you then go and say to yourself, hey, I'm going to pull out references of metal plating or a sword and go and study the crap out of it, go while I'm painting the piece. You know, like I've spoken to some industry professionals, and this is basically one way I think of always this is why art, you never stop learning, and you always grow, and it's not just about with art. It's not just about you can never stop learning. It's also you could always grow. You always grow as an artist. So even if you've studied metal 10 times, different types of metals, I'm sure there'd be a material you haven't learned. But there's also, can you paint that fast? Can you get really fast at painting metal? Can you actually paint metal from your imagination? If you've studied metal that much, can you actually paint it without looking at a photo? You know, these are skills that are good to have. And I'm not saying you're going to be able to paint every material from your head straight up. You know, it's going to take you a while to develop that skill set. But this is why art is a never-ending growth. You're never going to be a perfect. Well, you'll be a great artist. You can become a great artist, but reaching perfection is it's a pursuit. You'll never be the most perfect artist because there's always something else to learn. And this is why I try to be as humble as possible with my work, is because like a lot of people go, oh, your work's amazing, and I'm like, yeah, it's good, but it can always be better. The next painting can be better, will be better, or I'll try to make the next piece even better than what I've done before. And I think, you know, the question is, okay, then what happens if you don't stop growing, you know, and you don't have one style? I think your style always shines through. Like I did a test recently, I painted the goblin for September's video, and it looks pretty good, the goblin, and I'm pretty happy with it. The environment needs a lot of love, but the actual character design and the painting and everything looks good. And it's better than, I painted an orc shaman probably about 3 years ago, and that was in Imagine Effects for a magazine article. And that did really well, like people loved it, and I thought that was like my best character illustration I ever did, you know. And put the goblin next to the orc, and the goblin's better. In my view, it's better because it's more of a dynamic pose, the lighting's more believable, the textures are more believable, there's varying textures, metal really looks like metal, the leather really looks like leather, the skin really looks like skin, it's got glossy skin. You know, the sword looks like a sword, whereas the orc shaman, the wood doesn't look like wood. And so, like, over time, I've gotten better. However, the one thing is, okay, you could say they're totally different works of art. But one thing that I've noticed, me, Anthony Christou, the way I paint the painting, you know that they're both painted by me. And they're both painted in a similar style. So, there's nothing wrong with getting better. And even if your paintings get better, I can probably still sell that orc at a convention, or still have that orc, use it for something in the comic as a design, you know, because it fits a style. Your style is going to be you. You're going to paint the way you paint. Even what happens as you get better as an artist, your style does show through more. You know, your style does become more unique. But the major difference is that you become better, but you basically, your work has more, I suppose, detail or more information, visual information to it. You still paint it in your style, in the James or the John or the Samantha or the, you know, Jessica style. You paint it in your style, but as you get better as an artist, your lighting will improve, your textures will improve, your composition will improve, the mood of the paintings that you create will improve, and the atmosphere will improve. But you still see it's within, you can still paint within the style that you paint, because you can't change who you are. And that's why also as an artist, when you're painting something like this, you're going to paint it differently to anyone else. So a lot of people get really upset. You know, I see a lot of artists getting competitive with each other, or, you know, saying stuff about each other, or worrying about competition. Like sometimes a lot of artists worry about petty things. Oh, his work is better than mine, or she's painting better stuff than me. The thing is, the only way to, if you see people as being a competition as an artist, then you've got your own insecurities to deal with, because art is subjective. I may paint a goblin or an orc a certain way, but someone else will paint a goblin or orc a certain way, a different way that maybe some other people will like, but some other people will like my goblin or orc better. This Katyuska Moonfox painting, I painted it in a very realistic way, there'll be fans that love what I've done, but then someone does it in an anime way, or they do it in a different way, more of a sketchy way that, you know, it's not worse, mine isn't better than theirs, but people may like that better. And not all people, but certain people may gravitate towards that. And this is the thing where with art, you've got to not look at other artists as being competition. The only competition you should have is yourself. You should compete with yourself to be better. You say, where have I improved this month? You know, and this is the other thing is as well. If you create your own style, or you do something really well, like even if you paint in say a Blizzard style, you know, like the style of World of Warcraft, and you paint it so well, you might hit their style, but you do it so well that they employ you because of that. You might have a different spin on the Blizzard style, so that studio hires you because, hey, you fit into the Blizzard aesthetic, but you've got a really interesting and unique way of painting that, so that studio is going to hire you. So sometimes focusing just on yourself and not worrying about others or copying others will land you a gig because you're unique. So the way you draw yourself out with the competition is by being different as well. So people say you beat out other artists. You can beat out other artists, but you're still yourself. You're going to paint the way you paint. You know what I mean? It's like handwriting. Everyone's signature is different. So I don't actually see anyone as competition. I think I see myself as competition. I am competing with myself to get better. I'm pushing myself to get better in a nice way. And so I've gotten off track here, but it's really important, and this is why I find I learn things from everyone, because like I could sit there and say, like say I've had an artist that, say if there's an artist, I'm better than someone, say there's a student out there and they're getting into concept art and I'm in the industry that they're not, but they're still creating some amazing work. I'm going to learn from them a different way. They might have a technique that I can learn from, but I can't copy their style. Like they can't copy my style exactly. Now they can't be me and I can't be them. So that's why I try not to have any ego with art at all. I try to stay away from that because everyone paints their own way. So even if I like, and it's this why I'm all for sharing my knowledge, you know, is because I'm teaching you what I know, but you may still, even with the principles that I'm teaching you about composition and design, you're going to paint it the way that you're going to paint. You can't be me, and I can't be you, and thank God for that, because that's what sets everyone apart, and that's why no one is competing with anyone. You know, people will like you because you're you, and they will like your art because they like your art. It might remind them of something, but they're still buying your artwork, or they're still subscribing to your art because of your art. So I just wanted to say that as a motivational speech, because this is the thing, it's like you really have to stop viewing the world as being competition or other artists as being competition. And some of you may not do that, or some may do that, but and the reality is this. I mean, I have one artist that works for me in the US, and he paints very similar to me, but still he can't paint exactly like me. He understands my sensibilities. He knows I like to paint this sort of a mood, but he can't copy the way I paint exactly. He actually said it to me, hey, you know, Anthony, I reckon you could get into, say, you could work for a studio like Applebot, which is a big fantasy. They make the game Legend of the Cryptids, but he said that I can't paint that. He said to me, I might get into Magic the Gathering. We'll both get into Magic. He goes, but you have a certain style, or the way you paint fits the Applebot aesthetic. And then if I go and look at all the other artists that are working at Applebot, by the time my style is refined for, say, Applebot and the games like Legend of the Cryptids, my style, even it might fit Legend of the Cryptids, but what I offer them as a company will be different. It'll be a different aesthetic again. It'll be done my way. It'll still fit their game, but it'll be done differently. So I think this sort of talk is going to really help you all to really focus on you. Focus on what makes you better. You know, learn everything you can. Get as much information as you can from me, and then do it your way, and just do make your art the best you it can be. So what did I do here? Okay, I apologize for the distraction. I added fog. I'm playing around with color balance, the color balance layer. I'm just like on and off. It's just me being indecisive. Does it look better with more blue? Does it look better with red? I've done a color balance and a levels balance. I've added fog in the background, and I started adding in colored effects around her hand, so that way she's got some magical energy. So she has a light source. So the light source changes from red to like a pink color later, and I'm still cropping the image, making sure that it fits in perfectly. I didn't go with this crop. I believe it changed again. So this is just playing around with the design. So yeah, just make sure that with this, when you're painting something, experiment with the color balance, experiment with your levels adjustment, and experiment with texturing. Like here I'm adding the texture. I've added in a back platform as well. I painted that in on a break, just did that quickly. So I'm just adding in photo textures here, and I make sure that the bricks are big enough to fit that platform. So here I'm just dumping in texture, and the way I put the texture in is in luminosity layer. So I realize as well when I'm putting this in, the bricks are way too small. They need to be way bigger. And this is the thing, you know, things have to be in proportion to each other. If you have a look at those bricks, are really, really small bricks. You put that brick next to her leg, bricks aren't that small, especially for a castle wall. So, you know, I just plug them in and I start texturing them in, but you'll see later I actually make them way bigger. They become bigger. So this is the other thing, proportion. Make sure your proportions are right. You know, imagine if that book was really small, how off would that look? You know, or imagine if it was big, like the size of her leg, the whole leg. Then people are like, why is that book so big? You know, it wouldn't make sense. And that's what I mean by proportions. Make sure your proportions are correct based on your character. So that character there, you can see the bricks are still too small. The castle wall bricks are way too small, like incredibly small, and to the point where that structurally would not work on a castle. You know, it might make sense on the inside of a house, inside walls of a house or something like that, or paint like a cobblestone road, but it just is wrong. So I deleted it and started again. And again, I flipped the canvas, I played with the lighting, made sure that everything was right, made it look cooler. Lots of fun. And here I'm just cleaning up the perspective in the environment still. I'm cleaning up the castle perspective. I ended up adding photo texture to the castle as well. And I've painted in some texture. I made sure that the castle wasn't so dark. But yeah, here I'm just cleaning up the whole environment, final environment. Before I start putting in photo textures, I make sure everything's right as possible. So at this point I'm really happy with the character. I think she's really popping out. I maybe add some more detail later, but like she's like really popping out from that canvas, which is really cool. That's what I wanted. Very, very happy with it at this point. So extremely happy. And so here you go, plonking the bricks in. Still they're too small. So I'm like, yeah, scrap that. I'm playing around with it. I'm like, what's wrong? And here's where I scale them up, and they get big. They get chunky ass. The thing is as well, like, it's better to go big than have it too small, because it's the edge of a castle wall. She's standing right on the edge of the ledge of the castle, and she's sitting, so she's not standing. So it's really important that when you're doing that, you're better off in this case going bigger, as big as possible. And I did that obviously in the luminosity layer. So it's really important to scale that up huge. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to kill the painting. It's actually going to make it look more believable. It's going to fit in the environment really well, which is cool. So yeah, it's just a matter of, see, yeah, as you can see, I've scaled up the bricks. I've made sure they're in a luminosity layer, made sure it all looks cool, and it's all ready to go, which is lots of fun. And as you can see, I've got bricks in the background. They're the bricks that I'm going to use on the castle to make sure the castle looks believable as well. Really important that you do that. So just texturing in those bricks, you know, making it look cool, as cool as possible. And as you can see, I've zoomed in here. Details still weren't right. I still detailed the character right up to the end. I was just fixing that up. The thing is with the painting, the way I work is I try and get as much of the whole scene done at the same time. It is kind of a bit of a attention deficit sort of way of working, but you need to kind of bring up the whole painting at the same time, simply for the fact that you can figure out problems. If problems arise, like the environment, you can figure out lighting and all your issues straight away. Whereas if you go, oh, I'm just going to do the character and that's it, and then I'm going to do the environment, and then I'm going to do that, it doesn't work that way. You try and paint as much and draw as much of it in as you can. But in saying so, I should have drawn the whole scene out, even from scratch, you know. So, which is lots of fun. Lots of fun. Just making sure all the details are there. Every single detail is there. Otherwise, you're going to get some problems. Bigger problems. So yeah, I'm pulling up the grid because here I'm trying to figure out the bricks, make sure that the bricks fit that grid properly. See how the grid's going down in 3 points? I can then see, go I changed the color and the lighting of the walls so that way it makes more sense, you know, in terms of atmosphere wise. Very important to do that. So, and what I actually did is I put the bricks over the grid, over the bricks, and I went in and I painted on every edge. I made sure every edge is painted correctly. You know, I've gone in and said, okay, let's, you know, let's paint this edge, let's paint this edge, let's do this, let's do that, and make sure that the actual bricks fit the perspective and they're warping in perspective, they're fitting the actual grid, so that makes sense. And so I actually had to, even though that's a photo texture, I painted on top of that and made that fit. And that was a lot of work still. You know, I added more lines, I made them lighter in areas. And I had to actually make those bricks go down the other way as well. So people would think, oh, you know, you add photos and that's cheating. It's not cheating again. Like, this was so much work. I'm going for a realistic aesthetic. So I need to bring in photo texture to make it. You know, I can paint that. It'll probably be faster, but the thing with the photo, it's more time in manipulating it and getting that right. You know, if I painted each one of those bricks from the start, it would have been faster. The reality is, it would have been. But you're not to know until you try. And that's the thing. Yeah, so it's all fitting. I think the perspective of the bricks is making sense now, which is cool. You know, it was a struggle to get that right, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. Because it's 3-point perspective, there's more work involved, you know, and getting that lighting right so it looks believable. People go, oh, you know, you dumped a photo in. Yeah, I've dumped a photo in and I've painted over it like 10 times and I've adjusted and distorted the perspective of it, and I've had to change the lighting on it, and I had to paint and texture with a textured brush on top of that to make sure that it all blends in well, and I had to paint every edge of that surface. So if you just painted those bricks, it would be faster. It'd probably go a lot quicker because you could just go and paint with a brush, you know, a textured brush, and be done, because you could just go in and paint across the perspective, whereas I had to adjust that photo texture to fit the perspective of my 3-point grid. And so that's where, you know, you kind of have to blow out of your head this idea of kit bashing is bad. It's actually good, but you need to understand perspective before you do that. You need to understand lighting before you go into kit bashing. So, you know, I would paint everything from scratch, and if you wanted to kit bashing, do kit bashing. You know, whenever you're ready. You know, if you want to experiment, do it. But I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do. But all I can say is, you know, just experiment. Use every tool you can as an artist. Don't limit yourself to one tool. A lot of artists, they just go, oh no, I'm only going to do this. You know, I'm only going to do digital painting. I'm only going to do traditional painting. I'm only going to paint in watercolors. I'm only going to paint in acrylic. Don't limit yourself as an artist. Just don't. Learn as much as you can. Play with as many tools as you can. Figure out as many things as you can, because you might develop a new aesthetic or a different way of painting, or a different look to everyone else by experimenting with traditional, digital, 3D, photo composition, whatever. In fact, animators now, if you go to the US and you go and study animation, you're going to be art. You know, you can get a PhD in developing a new style of animation and experimenting. So if you can actually do a doctorate and come up with a new form, new look of animation, and you become a doctor in animator, a doctor in animation. So here I'm just retexturing the background, that rock, playing around with the shapes so that they're not all the same. The problem is there's a sameness about it still, and then I change it again so it's not so samey. It's as good as it can be. I mean, honestly, it still could be better, but I think the way I ended up with it, it has improved. It does improve dramatically. So it does improve dramatically. So I apologise for the noise in the background. I do live in a house with other people, so they're going to be noisy. And that's the joy of being an artist. I suppose it's good to have people around, you know, to work with and live with, because I feed off of other people with ideas, and you know, we all need human interaction, you know, so it's really good. But as you can see, it's a lot of work in getting this right. You know, I'm just painting. See how I painted that environment? Those two bridges in the background. The bridges still are there in the final painting, but they're being pushed back dramatically. You know, really far back. So it's really important to kind of make sure you do that. Yeah, I think these shapes look more interesting, more like nature, more like cliff faces that look like they're going to fall off or something. And I wasn't even painting from references; it was from my imagination. At this point, I would get references, but me, I like to just experiment, play around with stuff. I like to paint from imagination as well, especially with natural things that I know. So this is where I'm kind of happy, because it kind of, although it's quite the shapes that have equidistance, they don't. They have complexities and stuff in them as well, which is cool. And here I think I start texturing in the castle. Yep, I paint in some texture, use a textured brush. So look, that's how fast it is with an actual brush. You know, when you start putting in photos, it becomes more work. You have to actually put in every single photo texture. Lots of fun. So just texturing everything, putting everything in there. So here I actually pulled photo textures from castles that I find that I like. You know, I found that structure kind of looks like mine. And this is the other thing as well. You know, when you, even in digital illustration, if you grab like photo textures and stuff, you have to find the right ones that fit your design. Like, it's a lot of work. People think, oh, you just dumped a photo in there. I hope you like my funny voice. It's not just about dumping a photo in there. It's like, you got to find the right photo. You could be on the net for half a day looking for the right references. There's half a day gone. You could have sketched 3 paintings in half a day, you know. But if you're doing an epic illustration like this, where you want to have photo textures and you want to you want to photo comp in things into your painting, you know, for that realistic style. You know, the thing is as well is like, what I do is I started putting the photos, but then I actually pull back I clone stamp textures in, but then I actually pull back textures. I actually delete textures afterwards, and I paint over it again so that I blend it all in, so it has a whole painted. I still give it that painterly look. You know, it's really important to do that. You know, so you know, it's not easy. People think, oh, you dumped in a photo here. No, I've put a photo in. I put it in soft light layer. I've painted on top of it. I cut it back. I only put it in, you know, 10% opacity, and then I've painted on top of that. You know. And to be honest with you, some of the really top professional Magic the Gathering artists, I talk to them and I see how they work. You can even go online and have a look at, say how for some people like Clint Cleary work. He uses photos in his work. He might dump a photo in the background just to get the perspective and paint over that like 10 million times. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. You know, as long as you're not reliant on photos, as long as you're not like, hey, the whole piece is a photo, you know, then that becomes a problem. It becomes a problem with illustration, fantasy illustration. If you're in the film industry, it's no problem at all. If you're doing stuff for film, you can go in and use as much photos as you can to get the job right. And if it looks more realistic, the better. Especially if they're going to be shooting a movie, they want it to look like the movie, so it has to. You might be using actual real actors that are on the film project, like I have in the past, and you have to actually start with a photo plate of an actor and make him look like a zombie. You know, paint over them so they look like a zombie, and keeping in mind that if you're going to paint that person like a zombie, sorry, you have to make sure the effects can be practically applied. So if you know, hey, it's probably going to be too hard to make him have 3 heads, you know, or something stupid like that in practical effects. So if you know your makeup artist only has this sort of budget, you're only going to be able to do certain things. But anyway, so here I'm just basically adding photo textures, seeing what works. Does it work in soft light layer? Does it work in a hard light layer? Does it work in overlay layer? And I have no answer for that. You know, usually for me it's either soft light overlay, hard light layer, luminosity for texturing in photos, and I play around with the setting on them. Like, I actually make sure that they're not as opaque or they're not as detailed. So, you know, like, there's no answer as well with photo kit bashing. It is experimentation, and there's work in doing that. There's actually, hey, does this work better? Does a soft light layer look better here? Does a hard light layer work better here? And that's the realities of the game. You know, it is like that. It's not easy. It's not easy being breezy. But yeah, as you can see, I found some cool windows from a castle, a cool wall, and I just basically textured all that in, and went in and I just clone stamped it out, and then I deleted it in areas and I painted over in areas, and that's how I got that castle to look like a castle in the end. Lots of fun. And I'm not bashing people that want to totally paint everything. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's honourable. And I don't think using a lot of photos in your work is bad. I think there's no right or wrong answer to digital illustration. That's why it's digital. In traditional illustration you can't do that, and there's nothing. There's a different style of art for that. Whereas here I'm putting in these windows that save me a lot of time. Imagine having to detail that in a traditional illustration, probably would take me forever to do. But you could see, even though I plonked those photos in, I then pull out the detail later at the end. I actually did cut out a filter and it made it look more like a painting versus actual photos being plonked into a scene. So lots of fun there, getting that right. And the whole painting changes at the end as well, like the whole mood and colour as well changes a lot. So here I'm just working out the architecture, getting that architecture right, getting it to fit with the perspective. Also putting in the fog, making sure the fog fits. So it's a lot of painting and getting that right. Texture just keeps on going and going. Lots of fun. So yeah, just adding all the details, all the effects. You know, like here I'm just painting over the building. Now you see this is where I actually paint over the photos a lot and just blend it all in. You know, add more shadows, add more details, add more depth to the architecture. So it's really important to do that. You know, when you're painting something, make sure you actually go, hey, you know, I'm going to do this. So it's very important. So yeah, just playing with the light in here, like, you know, with the soft light layer, turning it on and off. Painting above everything, textures. Here it's like everything's pretty much sorted now. So at this point in the painting, I'm basically going through and texturing everything. One thing I've noticed, I say basically a lot, so I apologise, I'm going to try and get that word out of my vocabulary. But what I'm going to do is improve in this part of the painting. I start to improve and just clean up everything. Everything's done, you know, everything's totally done. The environment's blocked in, the textures are blocked in, and now I'm playing with the color balance. I'm creating the right colors. I wanted to go for like a magenta and blue color balance. You know, I want to give it more of a red and blue feel. I didn't want to go for greens or yellows. I wanted to have blue and magentas in there, simply because that's the colors that Tharja, the character, is in the actual video game. She's actually got those sort of colors. You know, she has that kind of a look. So it's very important to kind of do that, you know, make sure you have that done. So you know, it's just really detailing, noodling, painting over the whole thing again to make sure it all blends well. And here I just add more lighting. Like I have the grey. I put on the black and white mode. Like the way I do it is I fill a whole layer in with black, and then I put it under saturation mode, and I just switch it on and off and just check that the values are right in the final painting. So I turn it on and off and just check that everything's alright. You know, here is a lot of checking. Going over the painting, making sure it looks cool. Yeah, so it's just final details, final render, everything's in. It's just basically go in and clean up everything. This is the part where I'm kind of obsessive compulsive over, like with illustration. I have to get to, it gets to the point of no return where no matter how much information and detail you put in the face, people aren't going to really notice it. They will to a degree, but there's only so far you can push a painting, and yeah, it's just a lot of people struggle with that, you know, and I do as well. I don't know when to stop. I'm like, no, is it got enough detail? Is it realistic enough yet? Is it cool enough yet? It's just nature of the game as an artist, and you have to kind of say to yourself, it really is subjective, you know. Like, some people have different, I suppose, a different level of patience. Some people have a lot of patience to just keep on painting everything until it's perfect, and the thing is, as an artist, your patience is going to increase over time as you get better and better. So as you become a better artist, you're going to be like, hey, I'm happy to spend 20 hours on this, or I'm happy to go spend 50 hours on this, and you know, it's just, it is really, that's what it's about. It's just like, what is your tolerance level? That's the word I was looking for. So what can you tolerate? How many hours can you tolerate looking at a painting and getting it right? And this is where the patience comes in and getting everything right. And if you want to be an artist, you have to be patient. You have to be patient, and it's going to take you time to become a better artist. It's going to take you time. On every painting you do, it takes time. Like, if you want to do finished illustration, I'm not saying that this is the end all and be all, but it usually does take a good week to finish a painting and make a painting look really good. You're looking at about a good week. I used to think, hey, I'm going to get 3 paintings done in 2 weeks. It doesn't work that way. Life happens. You know, you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to look after yourself. The thing is, if you don't look after yourself and you lack sleep or you don't exercise, then your brain isn't functional to paint. And so for me, I'd like I was going to have, you know, 2 paintings done by the 14th, 3 paintings done by the 14th of September, but I said to myself, no, it's just 2. I'm going to stick to 2 and get them really well done. And if I do have patience to do a 3rd, and I think it's going to be good enough, I'll do a 3rd. But basically I start works and I have to put them on hold because life happens. I have business dealings, I have to go to a comic convention, and that's how art is. You know, if you're going to do it professionally, you have to be comfortable with that. You have to say to yourself, well, you know, I might get called up by Disney or called up by Warner Brothers or called up by a major studio and have to put my stuff on hold for them because I have to take up this opportunity, which is really great. So this is why it's better sometimes, don't rush your work. It's better to make amazing work. If it takes longer, it takes longer. Like here, it took me an extra day to detail and finish off the details. You know, I should have stopped it, but I was just like, well, I have to make sure it's really good. You know, otherwise, if it's not really good, I'm not going to be able to sell that as a print. Otherwise, it's not going to be good enough to get me work. It's not going to be good enough for a client. And the other thing is as well, if you're working with clients, you really need to have realistic expectations put upon you. You need to say to them, the one error I have made in the past is I said to clients, like, oh, how long did it take you to make this painting? And I said, oh, it took me 3 days. And in their head, they're thinking, wow, that's really fast. But the reality is, when you're working with a client, I should have said to them, this was years ago, I should have said it takes me 6 days or a week. It could take 2 weeks. How long is a piece of string? Because that client wanted endless revisions on a painting. It wasn't anything that I was doing wrong. There was 2 directors on the project, 2 writers on the project. And so painting takes time. You know, I'm not saying you can't get fast. And like, I have a mentor and he says to me, okay, yeah, you say you can only do 2 paintings in 2 weeks, a painting a week. But when you get, that's just a limit you've put on yourself. Maybe I can get 3 paintings done in a week, or 2 more paintings done in 1 week. In, say, 8 days or 9 days. Maybe I can. But the reality is, that can happen, but until I have to get to a certain level to do that. You know, and you only know until you try. So here, at the end of the painting, I'm just fixing up the levels, making sure she looks cool, making sure she fits the scene okay. You know, otherwise, if you don't, you're in trouble. you can get into all sorts of trouble if your levels aren't right. But yeah, I just did the final check on it and it was pretty cool. It looked very cool. I was happy with that. I think it's as good as it's going to be. And yeah, it's just, at this point, it was just like, okay, it's done now. I'm going to fix up the lighting on the character. I made her a little bit lighter so she pops out on the canvas. Because she's very dark in the photo. And I wanted her to really pop out. Because it's daytime. Like, this photo was shot in a room. And so you can see the lighting is totally different. And the colorization is totally different. You know, compared to the photo, and I've gone and I've lightened her up because so that I put a lot of light in her face and a lot of dark in her face, so that way the focus is right on her. You're looking at her, you go, okay, wow, that's awesome, you know. I don't know if it's awesome, but it's definitely lots of fun. Lots and lots and lots of fun. Yeah, so the final render, the final cleaning up of the illustration. Because the idea, for me as well, I mean, like I said, if I start a work, I'd rather not have a work that's kind of unfinished and take it to a conventional show a client, you know, as a final product. Simply because either the client's going to ask you to redo the work, or if you don't do this level of detailing, the print won't sell, and it won't be a popular print. And you know, like I said, it's sometimes better to just put artwork on hold if it's not finished, rather than release the artwork and show people an unfinished product and label it as finished when it's not. This is a lesson that I've learned, and it is hard because, you know, you want, like, there is a sense of urgency when you're an artist and you want to get better and you want to work for studios. There's this urgency to try and skip a few steps and get there. There's no skipping. You really need to sit there and detail, work how to paint hands, work how to, like, if you're going to be this is more about illustration, so if you want to be a really good illustrator for, say, books or for video games or whatever it is, cover illustrator for the box art of a game or whatever, you need to sit there and do the hard yards of detailing things, getting everything right. You know, and a lot of people don't understand that that's what it's about. You know, it's a lot of people like, oh, you know, I'm going to get a painting, smash out a painting in a day. Good on you, that's great. If you can do that, fantastic. You know, but if you can't do that, you know, don't give yourself pressure until you've got that quality under your belt, and take time to become a very, like, painting things like this in detail. Like me. This used to take me a whole month just to paint one. Now I can knock them out in a week. I then move on to a comic book page or a client painting. Like now, in a month, I will do 4 pieces of art. Sometimes even 5 or 6, depending on the client. If the client doesn't want something as detailed as this, we can do 7 paintings. It's like if we've got 3 paintings that aren't as detailed, I can do that. So that's one thing to keep going, you know, like, it's so it's something to remember, is like spending time and detailing your work. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. Of course, your quality is gonna improve and it's gonna take time to get better, but there's nothing wrong with taking time to make a good piece of art, and you just practice that over and over again, and then your speed will improve. Like I said, it took me a month to paint something like this, a whole entire month. Now, if I sit down, the time frame is a week, solid week of painting something like this, 4 or 5 working days. But keep in mind, this is with no artistic direction. So this is without. So in case there are clients that are listening to this video, if I have a situation where clients
I'm working with a client, it may take longer for a book cover or an illustration, a fantasy illustration for a card game, or illustration in general for a project. And same with concept art. A concept art piece for a client, we might knock out one in a day, but if the client comes back with revisions, or they want another version of the concept, or they want me to polish up, so if I do 5 concepts of a character like this, and they pick one, then I will spend a week or 3 days on rendering up a really good version of that concept, and they will still come back with changes. So sometimes projects take longer. When you're working with a client, a painting will take a little bit longer, simply for the fact that you're working with the director. There are changes, there are things to do, they change their mind, you change your mind, and there is expectations. And also quality does have to jump. When you're working with studios, me personally, I'll do my best to make a painting as kick-ass as possible, especially if I really love the studio and the client. Even if I don't like the project, I will still do my best to make the project amazing. And in fact, I will hire my other freelancers to help out on something if something is too hard and I'm just not feeling it, or I'm not doing it to the best of my ability. I will hire my assistant artist to work on it, and that's how I treat all my clients. But this is the reality of the industry: is you have limited time and you have to produce that same quality, and sometimes the time is extended in some cases, but sometimes it's not. So you need to be able to work that fast, you know. And I'm not trying to scare you all out of it. You will get there, but just keep that in mind. So here I'm just doing a color dodge layer. So the way I painted the lighting on her is I used the color dodge layer and I made it look all fancy smancy. At the end, I just added all sorts of effects. I added a color dodge layer, I added a soft light layer, I added a hard light layer. I played around with the color balance, I played around with the levels adjustment. I made sure that everything was right. So I went through and I'm like, okay, make sure that the lighting looks cool. And also I wanted to add more effects. So actually there was like a particle effect around her hand. I went in with a color dodge tool and I went in with a dotted brush and I painted each dot, each little aspect of that magical effect. I painted that, you know, in the color dodge layer. So that way I had lighting that looked more believable. And I also painted like dramatic lighting on her thigh, you know, make sure that light source that's coming off her hand, it's hitting that side of her body. I didn't want to add any bounce light to the right, only very minimal bounce light, because the reality is it's full daytime, so light would be kind of washed out in the bounce area. It would just be, things would just be normally illuminated normally, unless it's in cast shadow, which it has a bit of a cast shadow on the right hand side of her. So the light's kind of coming up from her hand. Here I played around with light. What would it look like with an aura around her? It didn't work. You know, it just didn't work. So I was like, okay, let's paint this properly. And I actually went in and painted in the pink. I really like the pink energy. That's what the character has, pink and purples. And it really worked for the painting. And I was really happy with the end result. You know, I added heaps of details. I made like swirly effects, you know, and I had stars and speckles in it and dots and stuff to make it look like magical energy. You know, that was the whole idea. And I was happy with it, and I believe that the cosplayer, Katyuska, was extremely happy with the final result, I think, I hope, and that was it. So it was pretty cool. But anyway, I really want to thank you all for coming and watching this video. I'll leave you all with this, and I hope you enjoy it. And all I was doing at the end is just adding more details and adding more effects. So thank you for your time.